Hello everybody, welcome to Chess24 and welcome once again to Game of the Day. This time we are going to take a look at round 6 from Norway Chess, the big super tournament taking place at the moment, part of the Chess Grand Tour. It was another round filled with fighting chess, some very important decisive results. I would say that the most important, not a game that I'm going to cover now, but the most important result of the day was actually Veselin Topalov continuing his winning ways. He now has an incredible 5.5 out of 6, a performance of around 3,200. And if he carries on at this rate, he's actually going to catch Magnus Carlsen in #1 position in the world. It's been an unbelievable tournament for the Bulgarian #1, who really, apart from playing pretty decently in his game yesterday, I should say in round 6 against Alexander Grischuk, was fantastic with the black pieces. Everything has been going his way. Got a few lucky breaks, but that's what you need sometimes. So big win for him. That means he increases his lead over the field. But the game that I'd like to analyze with you guys today is the game between Anand and Vachier-Lagrave. Now, Vishy Anand has also had a mini renaissance, not only this tournament, this year. We're seeing signs of the old Vishy, the Vishy we all grew up with and saw crush a lot of the world's best in flamboyant and fantastic style. There were a couple of years, I would say, maybe 2 or 3 years, where it felt like Vishy was a bit scared of his own shadow in some ways. He was a bit afraid of taking a few risks. It's great to see a Vishy back in form, and a confident Vishy. And what that also means is that his opponents and his rivals and colleagues at that level have to also be very careful, because an informed Vishy is a very, very tough opponent indeed. So the question was, could he continue this against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, who has been struggling of late? There's no doubt about that. MVL, the French #1, who shot up to 2770, has dropped a whole load of points. He's around the 2730 mark. Question is, could he actually contain an informed Vishy? Let's see. Well, the opening started out as a Sicilian Najdorf. No surprises there. MVL, along with, I would say, Boris Gelfand and Alexander Grischuk, are the leading exponents of this line, which was, of course, once a Kasparov favourite. And here, Vishy plays the move 6-8-3. We've seen it in this tournament. We saw G3 by Carlsen. H3 is a kind of a similar system, except that in these positions, after E6, White plays G4 in one go. So White's idea is that he expands on the king side without wasting a tempo going G3 and G4, which you can do in some of the positions when you start with 6G3. That said, after H3, I would say that the main reply nowadays is to go E5. And after knight D2 to actually stop this G4 advance with H5. This has been seen a number of times, and it looks as though Black's doing okay in that line as well. But E6 the other way, G4. Now G5 is a serious threat, so Black plays H6, Bishop G2, and Knight C6, Bishop E3, Bishop E7. And after F4, the structures we reach are more classical structures of the Sicilian, where White... It's a very interesting, very, very already dynamic position. White has gained a load of space on the king side. He's launched these pawns up the board. But at the same time, of course, as soon as you make a launch like this with your pawns, you do leave a lot of space in behind. And really, what decides this position, what inevitably decides the game, is whether White is able to take advantage of the fact that he's got a space advantage, that he's got certain initiative, that he can create some attacking chances on the king side, or whether Black, if he's able to defend these long term, he's going to have less weaknesses, he's going to have a more compact structure, and try and win that way. normally via a counter-attack, either on the queen side or in the centre. So it's a very... The position balances on a knife edge, and it's a very interesting position. I think black objectively should be okay, although my particular preference is to play white in these positions. Anyway, f4 played by Vishy. I should point out the move queen e2 is also another interesting way to play this position. The point being that white wants to get in a castle's queenside very quick. This was tried by Shirov against Kismatulin, but after takes an e5, I like this idea. Bishop e3 and bishop e6. Suddenly, the problem is that white hasn't gone f4, and as soon as he does go f4, black snaps that off and plays knight d7, looking to occupy the e5 square with his knight, but also threatening to cause some irritation with the bishop along this diagonal. So I'm not so keen on this particular way of playing for white. I prefer f4 by Vishy and knight d7 anyway. I think that's a necessary precaution because there are a lot of, in this position, takes and e5 ideas that you have to try and avoid, but also there is a little cheeky check that black may be threatening. And here Vishy castled, which I like very much. The move queen d2 was actually already played by Vishy in the candidates last year against Mamedyarov, but he got nothing. Because after takes, and now e5 again, we see this move. Takes, check. This was a very important intermediate check. Bishop f2, and knight takes e5, castles, and bishop e6. This knight is just an absolute monster on e5. It's untouchable. The bishop on g2 is now a bit misplaced. Yes, white has got knight d5. Yes, the d6 pawn is weak. But instinctively, this feels like black has got a perfectly reasonable position. And Mamedyarov, I think, played well here. Which is why Vishy played castles. And now Vachier took, and castled. Which, yes, again is very standard. I wonder if the move e5 here was possible, but clearly with white might have slightly accelerate or improve versions of similar positions than what we saw before, because he hasn't wasted any tempi with his queen, for example, on move 11. So might not be so good. So Vachier castled, Vachier-Lagrave, I should say, and queen d2. This is apparently a novelty, which the idea is that white willingly retreats the queen because there are always e5 breaks, and if he can meet e5 with f5, he's going to be doing great. And also now he might be thinking about a little knight maneuver, and this is an important maneuver, as we'll see. Knight e2 was played in Shirov-Sutovsky. This is also an interesting move, but I do like the move queen d2. I think that's a nice prophylactic move, getting out the way of e5, anticipating it at least. Rook b8, played by Vachier-Lagrave, and knight e2. The idea of rook b8 is, of course, to be able to play b5 and once again not get in any trouble along this diagonal. Rook a d1 was the predecessor of this game. This happened in Novara Grishchuk from the Tromsø Olympiad in 2014. But knight e2 follows the plan of this regrouping. b5, rook a d1, queen c7. So black's playing very typical Sicilian moves. He wants to fully mobilize and, you know, claim that white's center is a bit fragile. But here Vishy plays the move f5. I like this move. It's a very tricky move to play f5, and the reason is that timing is absolutely essential when you play this move in this particular structure, because you do concede the e5 square. And if you allow, in some positions, the knight to come here with no follow-up, this is actually strategically a terrible move, f5. But in this particular position, I think the problem with knight e5 is that there are lots of bishop takes h6 ideas in the air. And after g takes h6, f6, attacking the bishop and threatening queen takes h6. And actually this concept of bishop takes h6 is absolutely central to this position working for white. And we'll see why in a minute. That's why after f5, Vachier-Lagrave played knight f6. Vishy continued with his regrouping of knight g3, bishop b7. And now Vishy played the move king h1. This is a kind of difficult move to play because you do put the king on the same diagonal as the bishop. But his reasoning is that actually the king on g1 is more susceptible to some annoying checks or annoying threats along this diagonal in the long term. And we'll see why that may be the case. In fact, the move bishop takes h6, the move that we're going to see is absolutely central to his whole setup here, doesn't work because after takes, and now d5, we'll see that the king on g1 in this position is open to some more checks. In fact, this is almost identical to the game, except with the king on h1. We'll see the differences now. So after king h1, rook b d8. The move d5 definitely ran through Maxime's mind, but I think the follow-up was that white wanted to go e5 here. Really interesting move. And after queen takes e5, bishop f4, and something like this, where black gets 2 pawns for the exchange, I think in hindsight might have been the better choice. That said, after e5, knight f5, still white is the one who carries some initiative here. Because the problem with rook b d8, as we saw in the game, was that this shot, bishop takes h6, was absolutely deadly and so well calculated by Vishy. Because after takes, basically, let's have a look at this position. White sacrificed a piece, but his idea is clear. He just wants to kick this knight with g5 and play f6 and mate on g7. Very, very primitive way of playing. So black has to react immediately. Knight h7 is met by knight h5, and that's curtains. Rook fe8 is also no good because after takes, check, and knight h5 again. This is a very strong move. Takes, check, all forcing check, and now rook down to f7. That's game over. That's mate next move. So Maxime was forced to play this thematic breaking move d5, and Vishy had to have had everything calculated here. If not, you just lose with white. Sacrifice a piece. It's got to work. g5. Curiously, those who were watching the live stream and perhaps using an engine, it's amazing, but the engine's first feel here is actually to give perpetual check with queen g5 check, followed by, queen h4 and so on. Amazing. But as soon as you put in the move g5 into the engine, it goes crazy and says winning for white. So I wonder why the engine has an issue with seeing g5. White doesn't pass the horizon, or at least touch the horizon. Very strange indeed. But after g5, actually, this is completely winning. Because after queen takes g3, white is now 2 pieces down. And he has to find the correct move here, which is the move rook to d3. That's the only move. G takes f6, despite looking attractive, it would actually be a huge error. Because after bishop d6, black covers the queening square and threatens mate in 1. And actually, this is just game over for white. So you have to kick the queen away with rook d3. And now Maxime played knight h5. Now, you can't blame him for playing that move. But basically, after rook d3, all the lines seem to work for white. For example, if knight takes e4, perhaps this was a good try. The point is that taking on g3 now takes, and here the critical move is knight takes f5. This is the important move, not taking on f1, which may run into f6 and again mate, but knight takes f5. And black has got a lot of pawns, and he's managed to quell the white attack. And actually, probably white's got nothing better here than to bail out with a draw via some idea like takes, and g6, followed by a perpetual. I don't really see anything else. This bishop can't get into the game. So after knight takes e4, rook takes g3 is a mistake, so f6 would be forced. And now after takes on g5, takes. Curiously, white wins a piece and then wins a rook by force. But after rook d7, rook g3 was the move that you had to see in advance here. I think if you take on f8, king takes, taking stock here, black has got a marvellous pawn centre. He's managed to consolidate somewhat. He's got a pawn for the exchange, and it's not so clear. This bishop in the long term could be a great piece. So rook g3 is a great move. And the point is that now after takes, check, king h7, rook f4, white sets up a really cute mating idea. So king h6 is the only move. But after rook g3, again, the idea is renewed. Now king h5, but this now runs into check. So, and pushing him back and forth mate. So that was a really cute little idea there. It should be pointed out that here after f6, if bishop takes f6, another very important move that white had to foresee after bishop takes f6 is the move bishop takes e4. Amazing. Once more, you don't take the queen, but you take the knight. Now you're threatening mate in 1. So you have to takes on g3. Now the story isn't quite yet over because you have to analyze e3 check. But actually, after the simple king g1, black would love to get in e2, bishop d4 and cause all kinds of chaos. But after bishop d4 and now just the simple move rook e1, actually there's not much more to be done here for black. A check can just be met by king h2, and black hasn't got enough. This pawn is falling, g6 is in the air, it's just winning for white. So kudos to Vishy, who worked all of this out. Maxime went for knight h5 in the end, but after now just g6. Again, this was an absolutely critical move. Rook takes g3 could land you in all kinds of problems. So g6 is the right move to threaten mate on h7. Takes, and now takes. Once more, I think I remember seeing Maxime in the press conference say he just completely missed this, because after takes, if black had a check, he'd be winning, but he just doesn't have a check. So at the moment, white is threatening mate in 2, and black has got nowhere to put the queen. So you have to give up the queen here with black. There's no way of stopping the mate otherwise. Knight f6 is one way. And after takes, bishop e2, e3 check, king g1. The smoke has kind of settled, and white has got, well, I mean, let's just count the pieces. White has got a queen for 2 pieces. Black has got a little initiative that you need to extinguish, but really there's nothing. Bishop c5 was tried with one last trick to play rook down to d1 check. So, for example, a move like h4 would be, well, it's a silly move anyway, but it would lose because rook d1 check is the last trick in the position. King h2, rook h1 is a cute mate, and of course taking would lead to check. I mean, even this, maybe there's some crazy way, but even this is probably losing now. So king f1 is just a nice way to sidestep everything. And that was that. Maxime threw in the towel, understandably so. There is no follow-up. You can't move the knight because of mate. There is no check down the back rank, and white's threat of just going g7, or even, if you want to be really prudent, just take on e3. And even if you gave up the rook for the bishop here, your material advantage is so much that it doesn't make a difference. Yeah, it's just game over. So a great victory for Vishy Anand, showing some vintage Vishy, the Vishy that we all want to see a lot more. I feel like, as a chess fan, that we haven't seen enough of this kind of Vishy over the past few years. And I hope that this year is the start of something where we really still start to see the old Vishy, the Vishy that didn't really fear anybody, and the Vishy who actually sacrificed things from time to time and went for the jugular. Let's see what happens. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that. Remember to check out the live broadcast of Norway Chess. And remember to check in with me again for another installment of Game of the Day. But for now, that's all, and look forward to seeing you all very soon.